Hi everyone. I'm making the case for why we need to change the way that we eat in Scotland and across the UK to tackle the climate emergency in a fair and effective way, and also for why Scottish Government needs to be involved in meeting this challenge and making that change happen. So first off, I'm going to cut to the chase. To tackle the climate emergency, we have to look at what we eat, and we have to look at eating less of the most damaging products that we produce in our food system, which is primarily meat and dairy. In fact, if we don't tackle what we eat, we're unlikely to be able to solve the global problem of climate change. There's lots of evidence that shows this, but a recent study published just last year demonstrated that even if every other sector, even if transport, if energy, decarbonised from this year, the global food system would still take us over the limit to keep global heating below 1.5 degrees. So in other words, if we don't tackle food, we can't tackle this problem properly. The good news from the research was that if we reduced food waste, if we ate a healthy level of calories, so we didn't eat too much, and if we reduced our meat and dairy consumption, we could deliver 88%, nearly 90% of the emissions reductions needed from food production. And you can see from this graph that dietary shifts, eating less meat and dairy, are almost half of that emissions reduction. They're a really major piece. And I think the good news about changing diets is that it's a change that doesn't require infrastructure, it doesn't require a huge technological leap forward. It just requires concerted action and leadership from government. So how do we get there? Well, waiting for social norms and for markets to catch up with climate realities is not going to get us there fast enough. This graph shows meat consumption in the UK over the last few years. As you can see, even in a time when people have been thinking about reducing their meat and dairy consumption to be healthier perhaps, and where there's an increasing availability of meat alternatives, meat consumption is still quite high or even increasing. So we need government action, and in the systems framework you've been using, that puts us at the level of public policy and how it influences up that system into social norms and down to how businesses and institutions behave and how individuals and households behave. And one way of thinking about what Scottish Government can do that I wanted to share with you is this framework. It's from Public Health, first published by the Nuffield Foundation, and it's called a ladder of intervention. You go up the ladder from at the bottom, quite light touch policy options, to increasingly interventionist options, depending on how urgent the problem is and how quickly you need to address it. And in this case, in the case of climate change, it's pretty urgent. So at the bottom of the ladder, we've got the policy option to do nothing. On the first rung, there's a light touch policy option about providing information, informing people about the links between climate change and eating too much meat and dairy, for example. Now, information is good, but evidence shows that informing and educating people is not enough. It may help create a mandate for change, but it doesn't create change rapidly. It doesn't create change fast enough. So let's go a step up. We've got guiding choice by default. In other words, making certain choices, for example, a vegetarian option, the default option. This is something that businesses do already in terms of where they put food on shelves or on menus. One thing that Scottish Government could do, for example, would be to require all public canteens to make the dish of the day a veggie option. Another step up the ladder, another more powerful option, is to change what we eat, what we choose to eat, by changing incentives. People in Scotland eat double the protein they need, yet only half the vegetables and fibre. So how about incentivising more veg consumption by making it easier for people to buy fruit and veg, for example, through voucher schemes to families with young children or people on low incomes to enable them to buy more healthy fruit and veg, or by increasing the availability of fruit and veg in the market by supporting horticultural farmers. Another step up the ladder is, as well as incentivising healthy veg consumption, also disincentivising excessive consumption of damaging products. So low meat prices are a barrier to reducing people's meat consumption, One way of helping people eat less meat is to make meat more expensive, for example, through a carbon tax on high impact products. Another step up the ladder is to reduce choice. And this is something that's been done in other areas of public health, like for cigarettes, using plain packaging, restricting advertising, making it more difficult to sell people products that are bad for them. And finally, on the top rung of the ladder, we have very strong interventions, like banning certain meat products, perhaps the most damaging meat products, such as chicken that's been fed soy grown in parts of the world where growing that soy has caused deforestation, contributing to climate change. All these are options available to Scottish Government, and without taking up one or other of these options, it's very unlikely that we'll see the kind of change in diets that we need to see over the next few years to make sure that the food system plays its part in meeting the climate emergency and meeting it in a fair way. Thank you.